1. Retail time. Those were the days. I worked in the number 3 office supply chain in the country. Small flex, as there were only 3 office supply chains at the time. Well, I had one of those district managers that went to district manager school and did all the district manager things. You know, sending emails with random words in bold, different fonts, colors. His emails read like William Shatner having a stroke. The dude was a company man. Read over-enthusiastic. Corporate had released a new policy about how we should set the standard for customer interaction. Don't just say hi or welcome to when a customer walks in, but treat them like you're happy they are there. Express interest in them on a unique level. If they're wearing a sports team hat, and you know the team, say, hey, great game last night, right? The general idea was to personalize the experience. Don't just stand around like an NPC in a video game, saying the same lines again and again to everyone. Saying the same lines again and again to everyone. Saying the same lines again and again to everyone. Well, Mr. District Manager Guy, living close to our store, popped in the day of the store meeting, where this was all announced, and decided to encourage us and lead by example. That's actually pretty cool of a DM to do, but he had also a history of throwing tantrums, and we were like the bad news bears of the district, so it was more treating us like little kids. It felt more condescending than anything. Mr. District Manager interpreted the new policy to be talk to the customer like they are your best friend. We role-played, and he would berate employee after employee to get it right. Role-playing in retail is always awkward, and this isn't a theater troupe. They aren't trained actors. The majority of the staff is first-time job high school kids and part-time college kids. I was the latter. Our performances were not Hollywood. He wanted Hollywood. And me? I'm a sarcastic clown who loves having a little fun. The kind of guy that practices making ridiculous faces in the mirror, so I can try them out on unsuspecting friends later. I love an audience. Don't give me an excuse to be ridiculous. So the store opens at 8 a.m., customers start coming in, and Mr. District Manager is still there, watching our performance and rating us, but not being as loudly snide in front of the customers. Finally, it's my turn, and he's once again repeating out loud, "Remember, you need to treat the customer like you would treat your best friend, walking into your house." Ooh. I remember the customer who walked in, an old guy in his 60s we gave the nickname of Reno, and I know he heard every word Mr. District Manager said. Reno was one of our favorite customers. You're about to understand why. Reno walks right up to me. I say, "Hey dude, what's up?" Reno says, "You know, man, same shit, different day, right?" Tell me about it. My district manager has been a real pain in the ass lately with some dumb new idea that's probably going to blow up in his face. Sounds about right. Hey, I need to get some folders for a presentation for the condo association. Know where those are? Back of the store. Find them yourself, dude. I'm not your servant. Fair enough. Think your manager buddy has figured out how stupid this is yet? I don't know, man. He's not that bright. Reno takes a step to my district manager, gives him a big slap in the arm, the kind that ends with his hand gripping the arm, high up by the shoulder, stares him in the eyes, gives his shoulder a small shake. I think he'll figure it out. He doesn't want to make the store's best customer angry. And Reno walks off. Mr. District Manager is beet red angry. If there were a cartoon, there would be steam. He breathes. He practically hisses through clenched teeth, asking, "Just what the hell?" was I trying to pull. I do my best Joey from Friends. What? You said treat him like my best friend, and Reno practically lives here. I got written up that day. #worth it. So many times I should have been fired from that job. Also, this was like 2004, so I obviously didn't get the word-for-word banter perfectly memorized. But that was the kind of guy Reno was, and that's the kind of employee I was, and that's the setup we were given. 2. Learning English as a second language can be tough. Learning any new language can be. Overall, what happens in the following story is the singular reason we reacted the way we did to the bully. I like to layer encouragement and praise on people trying to learn English. I only offer constructive criticism when asked directly. Now, on with this story. I was a freelancer for a media company that maintains a database for their videos, photo galleries, other digital property, as well as a separate bit for contracts and the like. One of the clients who struck a deal with them to utilize their IP was represented by a woman with serious bullying issues. Boomer. She was a Luddite and rarely seemed to understand anything that was being said on the conference calls. So I suppose, to feel important, she acted like the grammar police, and would interrupt her own boss's business partners and stakeholders in mid-speech if they said something slightly different than how she wanted to hear it. Sometimes she did this multiple times in a single call. The worst was when she abruptly corrected ESL folks, like the group from India, or the project manager from Germany, or the account rep from Hong Kong. Really any stakeholders from any non-Anglophone country who were still learning English. But on top of the grammar policing, she had a special fixation on correcting violent words and phrases. Examples to follow, don't worry. Now, this is something I would support to a degree, as I try to avoid that language myself when I have the presence of mind to do so. There have been fair-minded movements for years now, all basically calling for a reduction in this type of language. But Boomer never conducted herself in a way that was respectful of anyone about this. So for me, it's not about the nobility of someone's cause, it's about how you treat people. When someone casually said, "Shoot me a note," very common to hear, Boomer would interject, "Wait, why did you just say that?" You could hear a pin drop. The proverbial tumbleweed would roll through. It's hard to convey the total rudeness, but this is tangible stuff. She would then pontificate briefly on why such phrases were unacceptable, and it's a shame we have not moved beyond this language. And suddenly it was like crickets again, like we are supposed to go back to the topic at hand, like she didn't just treat someone like scum for saying a very common phrase. It's such a disruption, and she never apologized a single time. The first few times this happened, people were stunned. People from all countries of origin and all age groups. The other boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and the younger folks. This also extended to hunting-related words, the phrase "shooting fish in a barrel," and harmless phrases like "deer in the headlights." When anyone said this stuff, she acted like she was being given carte blanche to be an entitled bully with anger issues for 45 seconds. Even the group I worked for, who got regular royalties checks from her boss, hated this. When she wasn't pulling these stunts, she was silent except for terse, distracted, soulless replies, and only when absolutely necessary. So to understate it politely, she earned only negative feelings from everyone. This came to a head. It turned out that the company was helping with a lot of her syndication in sub-licensing docs, and even cloud management free of charge. They did not have to do so, and it was not in the contract. This had been unofficially grandfathered for her by one of the senior sponsors, and only because Boomer was a Luddite. The operations guy who did some of this grunt work for her finally got insulted by one of Boomer's direct callouts. He said something like, "We need a dev who can hunt down the root cause." And she snapped as usual, so he categorically refused to do the work, meaning she would need to pay extra to get database access and do it herself like all the other clients. I saw a fun opportunity here and seized it. I volunteered to handle it for her myself, until I could set her up with the necessary access, at which point she ultimately would use the same screens I use. She readily agreed, and this is where I think malicious compliance comes in. We made a customized interface for me to use. and then gave her access to it. They were technically the same screens I use. There was a Brazilian IT guy who hated her more than anyone, and a girl in the creative department who commiserated with our cause. I sold them on the little plan, and one evening we made it happen. There was a duplicate web GUI that had been created for testing or something, but was now disused. We decided to grant her access to this GUI, not the production standard one, but with the key verbiage and icons of violent language. We knew she'd hate perforating the entire thing. The quick access bar that follows when she scrolls has these 6 beauties. Report Crusher. This was a reporting system she would be using 24 times per week. The icon was a vice with a paper getting smashed inside it. If you looked closely enough, the paper had the tiniest frown. Document Hunter. Instead of search, the icon was a bullseye getting hit with an arrow. Shoot us a note. Instead of just contact us, the icon was a speeding bullet with an innocuous chubby-cheeked smile and a baby-like expression. Memo Cannon. This was my favorite little contribution to the whole thing. It was always just a broken link. It never did anything except take you to a unique 404 message page with a teensy little drawing of a deer with antlers, his tongue sticking out slack-jawed, and X's over his eyes. I just thought Memo Cannon was the funniest phrase I had come up with, and we knew it would stare at her in the middle of the screen for the next few years. The icon was a squat little cannon with a sparking fuse. Troubleshooting instead of just help, but the 2 zeros were crosshairs. Wiki Change Patrol. This was worthless since it just linked to a recent changes page for a wiki full of deprecated docs that nobody consulted, but the icon was a gendarme-looking guy smacking a huge baton into his palm. It also featured these gems. The cancel button for the reporting system said kill task instead of just cancel. We had a file deduping routine. We changed the text for that button to say got time to kill? She didn't have permissions to access this actual function, but she would be seeing this button each time she opened any document in the web viewer. There were a handful of spots where the IT guy put a splash of camouflage coloration. In the standard environment, these were all just dead spaces. He thought, I believe correctly, that camouflage would get her blood to boil. Before we granted her access to this wonderful Frankenstein, I permanently switched to the same environment GUI, so I could say honestly, yes, these are the same screens I use, which is what she agreed to. I hashed together a walkthrough in PDF that even a zombie could learn from, using screen captures from the new interface. Passed it along, and that was that. The fallout is a bit anticlimactic, because I never got any calls from Boomer directly with feedback that I could savor myself. This is because she lured some gullible student to do the grunt work for her in an unpaid gig. So, where I thought I'd be cherishing an apoplectic response firsthand, I actually wound up liaising with a disinterested teenager. But eventually it did filter back to me that when Boomer finally saw the screen, she was really livid. She called the account manager and demanded changes. The AM and anyone else we knew was liable to get a call from her had been prepped beforehand for this eventuality, and had access to screen captures, which backed up the idea that what she was seeing was the normal interface. Absolutely no changes whatsoever were ever made. 3. This was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I was the only full-time IT person at a $100+ million a year in sales company. I worked 55 to 65 hours a week between on-site and at home. I reported to the controller and everything was fine until he quit and they hired the new guy. The new guy was the youngest controller ever hired by our site or any of our sister sites. Man, did he think he had something to prove. First thing he does is pull me into his office to inform me that my team will be the first ones in the building and the last ones to go home. I expect to see you in your office any time I'm in this building. I don't care what you do. Just make sure you're here at 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. I tried to argue with why that was a bad idea. He was having none of it. My response is a collapsed, okay. as if I tried to make it a single syllable. Anyone who worked with me knew they were now fucked. I was literally the only guy with the keys to the castle, literally untouchable. Malicious complaints. Met with the OSHA lead to see what appliances I could run in my office safely. No electric kettle. Met with HR and informed them I would be making a spreadsheet of my daily work activities, just in case I needed to prove my productivity for any reason in the near future. They thought it was a joke and said okay. Then I set up my second home. Over the course of the next few months, every day I showed up at work at 7:15, went to my office, and worked until 3:30. Then I would start my vacation. I brought in a Raspberry Pi and played games, brought in crockpots of food, and invited key members in to graze and chit-chat. One day I set up a panini press bar and invited all the engineers in for sandwiches, watched movies, listened to music and ebooks, tried to get a dartboard approved by the safety lead, said no before I could finish my request. Basically, I did all the things I did at home, at the office. People would stop in after 3:30 p.m. and ask for help, and I would tell them no. Explain what I was told and tell them to stop in at 7:30 tomorrow, which was a moot point, because the site was an 8:30 to 4:30 place, and if possible, immediately go back to slacking off while they were standing there asking for help. This lasted about 2 months. Then HR called me and we had that meeting. I explained everything, showed my spreadsheet of work, and I included all the times I spent doing zero work, and what I was doing to slack off in that time. I was averaging around 35 hours of work a week, between breaks and lunches, that is normal. They were mad at me, and even more mad at the controller, because they knew my productivity tanked, and as a byproduct, so did multiple departments. I was told to go back to doing what I was doing before he started, and I would start reporting to one of the departments that needed me the most, instead of finance. Everyone in the office pieced together that their life got harder for those few months because the new guy deemed it so. He ended up relocating shortly after because no one wanted to work with him. I ended up working more normal work weeks, 45 hours-ish, and everyone was just happy to have me back to help when they needed it. 4. I'm a real estate agent in the Pacific Northwest. Inventory of homes for sale throughout the region are historically low, and demand is especially high, creating a perfect storm for buyers, forcing them to compete for every sale. It is extremely difficult emotionally for buyers and creates a lot more work for us agents for several reasons. The first is the home values are so high. People from all walks of life decide to become licensed agents, and currently we have more agents in our market than homes sold. That means we have a lot of inexperienced agents listing homes at prices that don't make sense, so we have to do a ton of work for each offer written to ensure our clients don't overpay for a property. Also knowing that the likelihood for an offer to be accepted is super low when there will be 5, 10, sometimes as many as 20 offers on any one home. Also, with having to compete against a ton of other buyers, buyers are offering to purchase homes with little to no negotiations for inspections, let alone repairs. This puts an even higher burden on us agents to try to look at homes as critically as possible, to try to catch costly repairs before our clients commit to purchasing. I woke up one morning with a text from a buyer expressing interest in a home that just popped up for sale. After looking at the details, I realized the home was perfect for the two of them. The listing pics were of a home that was nicely remodeled in an area of town they wanted to live, and at a price that was right in line with their budget. The private notes from the seller's agent to the buyer's agents on the listing said the seller would review offers 4 days in the future, and to submit your highest and best offer by 5 p.m. I reached out to the listing agent to chat about the home to schedule the showing. The agent was new, this was their first listing, and they also worked mainly in a city 40 miles away. The listing advertised a full remodel and incredibly low property taxes. Those are red flags 1 and 2 for non-permitted work. After scheduling the showing for the following day when my clients were off work, I set to work determining a fair price range per square foot and to verify the permit status of the recently finished remodel. First, I determined the home was underpriced by about $100,000. Any offer we would be making would have to be at a minimum $100,000 above what they were listing at. There are no deals in our market. An underpriced home will just get a ton more offers. No one is paying list price for an underpriced home. Second, I compared the home to the tax records and the listing pics from the last time it was sold. The seller was an investor that owned the home for less than a year. Well, wouldn't you know it, the home went from 1,300 square feet 2-bedroom 1-bathroom to 1,800 square feet 3-bedroom 2-bathroom home, with no permits on file from the city. This was an illegal flip. No permits pulled, no guarantees the work was done by professionals, no inspections to ensure the wiring was safe or the plumbing wasn't leaking, and no records with the taxing authority. This means that once the home sold to the new owners, the city could fine them every day for non-permitted work until the work was inspected, retroactively permitted, if even possible, and the county could sue the new owners for up to 6 years back taxes for omitted property. This means that the new buyer wouldn't have the state-mandated warranty from a licensed contractor. There was no bonding or insurance to collect if the work wasn't done in a professional manner. This could ruin a buyer if they weren't sufficiently capitalized. The flipper would profit, and profit mightily by taking advantage of a seller's market and unsuspecting buyers. While I was doing my due diligence, I was shocked to see the home went sale pending less than 2 hours after I first spoke to the listing agent. They didn't tell me an offer was received when I asked, and they ignored the offer deadline that they themselves set. The agent said the sellers received an offer they couldn't refuse. I then had to tell my rightfully frustrated clients that we missed the boat. They didn't even get a chance to see it in person. Here's the petty revenge. I collected all the information the listing agent provided, including the photos of the home, saved them as a PDF, and submitted them to our city's code enforcement department. Then I set the home on a watch list and waited to see what would happen. And waited, knowing full well I pulled the pin on a grenade, and hoping it was thrown in time to blow up before ownership was transferred. 10 days, 20 days go by, and I hear nothing. By the 25th day, I am starting to worry. A sale contract typically only takes 30 days to finish. Then, literally, on the 30th day, I see the city has officially launched an investigation, and a certified letter went out to the owners. And the sale hadn't finished yet. Just in time. Then the sale doesn't close. 35 days, 40 days, and nothing. On the 50th day, the deed is recorded and the sale finishes. The deal contained all the usual language, except that the previous owner was made responsible to pay for all fees, penalties, and fines issued by the city and the county for ongoing issues relating to the non-permitted work, and the subsequent tax increases they would have had to pay had they gotten permits in the first place. The buyer received the home with assurances they wouldn't be on the hook for the previous owner's negligence. For me, it was a sweet revenge knowing that the seller was held accountable to ensure they sold a home that was safe to live in. 5. So I used to work for a restaurant chain in the UK. I started out as a barman, but eventually got promoted to the point I was offered an assistant manager position at another unit. I had previously and am qualified in IT, so I take the job at what I now know is a ridiculously low wage of $16K a year. And yes, I could earn more in IT, but I'd really enjoy hospitality, so I just roll with it because I enjoyed the work. I settle in with a few hiccups, but because I'm really good at customer service, I sort of become the head of dealing with complaints. We would get emails from corporate, and I'd email or write letters back, usually without giving away free stuff, which was the norm, identifying the issue and explain what I would do to resolve it, as opposed to the usual just comp them. After a while, I'm a manager on duty, and the restaurant is running fine. When we get a big table and 10+ people, everything is going fine and the shift is running smoothly. I keep checking in with the party, not because my server is incompetent, but it's a big spend and a huge tip for her, so I want everything to be okay. One of the party joins late, as in the rest of the table have their main meals. This guy, Richard, you'll see why, rocks in late and orders a rump steak medium well. No problems, I make sure the chefs get it out quick, and bear in mind by this time I'm also kitchen trained, so I know what's what. And I have a good rapport with the chefs. I take it out, and before it even hits the table, Richard looks at me and says this steak isn't cooked medium rare and is overcooked. Okay, sir, I say. I'll have a replacement out right away. So I mosey back over to the grill, explain to the chefs, and they remake the meal. I take it back out, and Richard looks satisfied and eats everything. The table have desserts, tighter drinking, etc. Everything seems fine. Not the case. When it's bill time, the head of the table, instead of just asking for the bill, approaches me to pay. He's happy and just wants to pay so the others don't argue about who's paying or splitting, etc. Richard, however, is not happy. He approaches and tells me he isn't being charged for his meal because he had to eat after the main table. I explain he came in late and then refused the first meal without even checking, and that, the fact he was late, he was never going to eat with them anyway. But he's not having any of it. By the time everyone is listening, and I confidently explain to him that he ate the meal, and I was not willing to comp him for his lateness, and the fact that he hadn't even checked the first meal, just barked it wasn't good enough and wanted a new one, which we served and he ate. He insisted that he wouldn't be charged. By this time I had been there a while, and I'm used to professional complainers, as I call them, and I'm having none of his nonsense. I regularly worked 60+ hours a week, and on my wage it often put me on an hourly rate less than the servers, and they got tips. I straight up tell him no, you pay or I'll call the police and report you for theft. It's your choice. The guy's paying, trying to resolve it, and he backs down, and they pay and go on their way. All are happy, bar Richard, and they tip the waitress generously. End of story. Nope. A few days later I get an email from corporate, then a personal phone call from my area manager. It goes along the line of, "Why didn't you just comp him? He's complained to corporate, and now they're comping the whole bill. Why would you do that for the cost of a rump steak dinner?" I explain the situation and say, "Look, I'm in the right here. Back me up, please." Nope. I get in trouble. This is where malicious compliance comes in, and I can't believe I actually have a story here because I'm buzzing. For the next 3 weeks, the slightest complaint when I'm on duty, comp the whole table. No matter how many or how high the bill was, 3 weeks. During this time, I stopped doing complaints from corporate, emails, etc. As I told my GM, it's not my job, and that area manager has an issue with my complaints handling. I got a call from the area manager begging me to stop comping tables as refunds were through the roof. Ultimatum? Yeah, sure, I'll deal with complaints, but next time you back my judgment, as I have a pretty decent record. They gave in, and I resumed normal duty, but it still makes me smile. The best part was I left for another company and one day was visiting my old colleagues, and there was a new manager. She approached me as I was drinking in the bar side, talking to old regulars who loved me, and asked me to return as they've heard great things about me, told them they couldn't afford me. And she said, "Name your price, 25K minimum, and no more than 50 hours, and they took me back in a heartbeat." Side note, as a manager, I had a waitress there at the beginning. We were together 16 years, and married 13 this year, 8 kids. I think I won. Just to be clear, when I got promoted it was by my GM, but the area manager was his uncle, who I knew longer, which is why I usually answered to him, as I knew him and he saw me up and coming, which is, I guess, why he put me in with the new GM, his nephew. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 125. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do share it around. I really appreciate it when you do that. Also, likes and comments are appreciated. Right, as for why there wasn't a video yesterday, Well, you're getting it today because I made it yesterday. Recorded, edited, uploaded. And I'm pretty sure I scheduled it to go live at 8 p.m. And when I walked away from my computer, I'd hit the button to schedule. But apparently I hadn't hit it correctly. Because later that night I was thinking, Well, later that night, it was about 3 or 4 in the morning. I was thinking, I haven't noticed any notifications for comments. There's usually a few comments on the new video. And there was none. Because the video hadn't been uploaded. It was still in the draft stages. Plus side, it saves me making one today. Helps me get a little bit ahead. On the downside, well, there was no video yesterday. So, sorry about that. I was in a rush to take in a grocery order, which was arriving yesterday. You'll be happy to know it arrived and was mostly fine. So, yay. All right. Now, before we go on, I have a little shout out to give. And that goes to the author of story number 1, I think it is. 1, 2, 3. Yes, it is story number 1. And they have a podcast. I'll include the link in the description next to the link to their story. And the podcast is called The World According to Knox. Brian Preston. And up on Spotify. I believe it's up in other places as well. If you don't like Spotify, I'm pretty sure it is. I think it's on Apple. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure I found it on Apple. But if you'd like to check it out, link's in the description. All right, let's see. I think that's everything. Just had to re-record the outro. I thought, can I salvage that outro? No, we better re-record it. Make it nice and clean and shiny. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. Before we go, what was yesterday's question? All right, bit of a nerdy question, because I saw it trending on Twitter. I've been seeing it trending on Twitter for a few days now. There is speculation that Hugh Grant might be in the running to play the part of the Doctor on Doctor Who. But that's just speculation. Personally, in my experience, those kind of rumours never turn out to be true. Like the David Tennant one, he's not coming back. I wouldn't mind if he did. He was not my favourite of the new Doctors, but I liked him, so I wouldn't mind if he did. But he's not coming back. It's just not happening. And if he does, you can play this clip and say, "Ha, Hellfreezer, I told you so." But he's not coming back. Anyway, so if you had a say in the matter, who would you pick to be the new Doctor? And I'll make things easy on you. They don't have to be British, because I don't really care about that. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.